Hi, my name is Tim Svoboda, and my wife Carol and I live here in this beautiful city of San Francisco and the Bay Area. It's a city of 800,000 people, but it's connected as a metroplex, as we're going to learn about as we talk about working in cities. It's connected as a metroplex and makes up 8 million people spread across 9 counties, 101 different small and large towns and cities all connected together. And we just enjoy being here in this place of hyper diversity of ethnicities and opportunities. YWAM San Francisco Bay Area is a movement of ministries in 11 different locations of the Bay Area, each one focused in a specific way, maybe reaching an unreached people group, maybe doing church planting, maybe focusing on justice issues, or maybe working amongst the unhoused and the homeless, or working in a university campus. But they're teams. We see the San Francisco Bay Area as our base, and we see the different locations as our departments. And we gather together like a base does, but not as frequently as a base does, because we believe in being where the ministry is and being relevant and contextualized in that location. This is a hyper diverse metroplex. And as I tell you our story, I'll tell you more and more about it. But let me back up a little bit and just tell a little bit about our journey before I get talking about cities. I did my discipleship training school as a single person in 1975, before they had DTS, so it was called the School of Evangelism. My to-be wife was also in that course in Lausanne, Switzerland. After the course, YWAM was wanting to pioneer a new location in Kolkata, India. And so they were recruiting some of the students for that course, and I got recruited, and my to-be wife got recruited for that course. And you can see us here back in 1975. I'm kneeling down on the ground there on the left-hand side, and my to-be wife kneeling down on the ground on the right-hand side. And you can see, if you know Paul and Peggy Hawkins, old-time leaders of YWAM, they flew to India, and the rest of us that are pictured here in this 1975 photo, we climbed into those two vehicles there, the Peugeot 404 and the Volkswagen van, and we drove from Lausanne, Switzerland to India by car. It took us 40 days and 40 nights as we went from Switzerland to Germany, to Austria, to Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, into Turkey, and then we went into Iran and broke down at the Caspian Sea, and then limped our way across Afghanistan and into Kabul, across the Khyber Pass, and then through the northern plains of India into the grand old city of Kolkata, where Mother Teresa served the poor and the needy. And that trip changed my life. I had never been outside of the United States before. And this was an eye-opening experience where the world became very clear to me, and the need and the call to missions became very strong. We ended up living in India for 25 years, and I'm now here in San Francisco for the past 13 years. Our kids grew up there. Our son was born there. And so we have a lot of history there in the nation of India. If you want to read a little bit about our story, you can get this book only on Kindle on Amazon for just $3, called Footprints of Faith. And it's got incredible stories of the pioneering efforts of many of the young pioneers that went out there, like Steve Cochran, Mike Borden, Dan Bushy, CeeLo Schmid, myself, and others are all in this book, my wife, written by my daughter. And it's just a really fantastic read of what God has done in the nation of India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Um, and now we're seeing more and more work taking place in Pakistan and Bhutan and other locations in that region. I want to talk to you about cities. And today we want to just really just get an introductory start on this and talk about the strategic nature of cities. And I'm going to share this slide with you from Floyd McClung, who was our leader in Amsterdam for many years. And this is what Floyd says about cities. He says, there's no escaping the influence and power of a city. Think about that for a while. We're not talking right now about the size of a city. We're talking about the influence and power of a city. Doesn't matter how big a city is. I live in this city right here that you're seeing on the screen, San Francisco. San Francisco itself is only 800,000 people. The Bay Area metroplex is 8 million people. But the city where I'm at, and I'm right in this picture here, I live right in this area, is only 800,000 people. I call San Francisco the small city with the big mouth. What comes out of San Francisco? Google, Apple, Yahoo, eBay. They may all be down a little bit far down in the Silicon Valley, but they're all located here in the city of San Francisco. And they announce their products from this city. Levi Jeans comes out of San Francisco. The hippie movement started here in San Francisco. The gay rights movement started here in San Francisco. This little city, and there are many cities like this around the world, whether they're big or whether they're small, that have influence all over the world. You can take a big city like Paris and how it's influenced the world, or you can take a smaller city like Utrecht in the Netherlands that has big influence for world missions. It doesn't matter the size. It's about the influence. Floyd says there's no escaping the influence and power of the city. Cities have become the dominant social force in the world. Cities are the mountain peaks of society. Now watch this. Trends, ideologies, and fashions are born in the fermenting cauldron of city life and then flow down and out to influence the population. Now, that statement is so true that we find another statement here by Dwight Moody. More than 100 years ago, he said this. And this is what he said, the great evangelist, preacher. He said, if we've reached the cities, we reach the nation. But if we fail in the cities, they become a cesspool that will infect the entire nation. Cities, therefore, are strategic for world mission. It's important that we as YWAM or we as missionaries start thinking clearly about cities. Why? More than 55% of the world's population is now urban. Cities are strategic because of their influence, number one. Cities are strategic because that's where the people are. Now, as we stop here, I'd like you to just take those couple thoughts and discuss them. Why are cities strategic in your viewpoint? And as we start thinking about cities, I'd like you to also think about and talk about, are cities good or are cities evil? When we think about that slide that I showed you from Floyd McClung, he says there's no escaping the influence and power of the cities. They become the dominant social force. Trends, ideologies, and fashions are born inside of the city. There's something about the city that brings people together for good or for evil. So, how do you view a city? Are cities good or are cities evil? I'd like you to discuss also, where do you come from? Is it a city? Is it a town? Is it urban or is it rural? And if it's urban, what kind of influence does your location have to the people inside of it, to the towns surrounding it, or to the cities in that state or in that country or in that province? What kind of influence does your location have? Does it have an influence of revival? Does it have an influence of social justice? Does it have an influence of architecture? Does it have an influence of music? Who's come out of your city? I think it'd be good to reflect on a few of those things. And then we're going to come back. And I want you to particularly start thinking about, what is urban? What makes a city a city? And what are the different sizes of cities? And then we'll talk about that next. I hope you have a good time discussing these things. I look forward to continuing talking with you.